I teach in the East Moline School District. I have taught for 19 years at Glenview Middle School. I work primarily with the English language learners, and I am very excited to be here to take part in this discussion that is so needed to take place. But I'm very honored to be with two other very important people.
I'm Bob Tolich. I'm on the faculty here at Augustana, but my reason for being in this group is I served 15 and a half years on the Moline School Board, 6 of which as board president.
And I am Tia Rice. I work for Rock Island Schools. I have been there for the past 10 years. And in my current role, I am a principal, the principal of the Rock Island Academy, as well as a parent of 2 7-year-old twins that are being educated in Rock Island schools.
Well, we're going to share information, but I'm hoping that we will be able to come together with ideas how to address some of these issues and really bring change to our, like I said downstairs, to our young citizens, our little people who are going to be our future into our community, not just here, but worldwide as well. So I'm hoping that we'll walk away with some ideas. You brought some material.
We put together a small packet that we wanted to share with you. Tia brought together the first page, which is referred to as the 11 facts about education and poverty in America. Facts that a lot of people are not aware of as far as education is concerned and overall as far as poverty is concerned. And then after that you have a series of bar graphs, and we did this just because of the fact that we pulled together some material from our 3 districts concerning the amount of money that is spent per child in the educational process. As you take a look at East Moline and Rock Island as compared to the state, and you'll see that we're pretty comparable. We're all in the same ballpark as far as the cost is concerned. For the districts, we're spending between high $5,000 to low $6,000 per student. But then we also thought, just to show you a little bit of the income disparity, and this is not the wealthiest district in the state of Illinois. I just pulled out the Lake Forest Community School District 115, and you'll see that they spend more than twice per student that what we in this community can do. And in the fact that they spend over $13,000 per student, and that's just from what is called the education fund. That does not take into account the operations and maintenance and things along this lines. And if you see then that their amount jumps up to $22,000 a year per student, whereas in Moline and Rock Island, etc., it's still less than half that, between $10,000 and $11,000 a year per student. So we thought it was a good idea to bring some information together to you to first of all talk or show you just some of the facts about poverty, but also show you the problems that we have within the state of Illinois as educators, as board members, with the inequality of funding and the problems that this causes, simply because of the fact that you can only do so much with the dollars you have, regardless of how much you have. And I'm not one that says, okay, you should steal from the rich to give to the poor, but I'm also saying that there should be equality in funding, and the fact that East St. Louis, East Moline, Rock Island should not be prejudiced against because of the fact that they happen to be communities that either have come out of hard times or communities that have a large percentage of migrant workers in it, people of color, things along this lines, as compared to a suburb of Chicago where it's mostly affluent professional.
And one of the goals of today's conversation is we appreciate you coming out because, one, we know that you have an interest in being part of the change. And so a goal of today is to actually walk out of here when we head to the round table with some some next action steps of small things that we can be, but that are powerful things that we can do and share. One of my philosophy now is and I've only been in administration, this is my 3rd year, but as I'm developing my philosophy and what I believe, the true way to be able to teach the whole child is through advocacy and partnerships. And so essentially what we're looking at is how do we bring more of our community inside the doors and the walls of our buildings and our schools. and to be able to address some of these issues. And truly, with one of the last comments in the general session where the lady stood up and talked about not pitting us against each other, I think the main point of that was to drive home the fact that it's going to take all hands on deck to make a change and to move our organizations or our institutions in the directions that we know are best for our students who will later on become our citizens. So be thinking of things that we can do to work together that are small, or that this group can work towards those things. So the next time you come around, it's not just the recycling of the same conversation, but more of here's where we have gone since the first time we met together.
I was sharing with Tia at our, as we were sitting in the auditorium, that I come from a district, I teach in a district, East Moline, it is 68% poverty.
Excuse me, I don't hear well. Could you talk just
Yes,
a little
yes.
louder, please? Thank you.
I teach in a district that is 68% poverty. That number just keeps rising, keeps rising. I work primarily with students who are refugees and immigrants. I work with ELL students, English language learners, and they will be the first in their families to not only graduate high school, but continue on to the university level. And as I was saying to Tia, we have programs at our school, and I'm sure in Moline, and I'm sure in Rock Island, that that are enriching for our students after school. However, one of the issues that I have seen is that when we have such large number of students who come from poverty, they don't have the transportation available so that they can take part in these programs or be able to pay the fees for a lot of these programs. So they fall a little bit further and further behind. And as Tia was saying, I would love to come away with ideas of how can we help our students so that they can take part in these programs or bring in people from our community as well. Because there is so much richness. There are so many good people in our community. I think they just want to know how they can come and help. I really do believe that.
And to give you a little bit more information, just simply because of the fact that as a board member, I was always amazed. As you take a look at my district, Moline, and I live in Moline, it's amazing, but almost 53% of our students are in poverty. Moline is considered to be, it's the international home of John Deere. It's considered to be an affluent town if you take a look at the cities on the Illinois side. But yet almost 53% of our students are in poverty. We have in our district, depending upon how you count, anywhere from 17 to 27 different languages spoken in our district. We, as a district, have seen, except for the last year or so, the amount of money that is spent or that is sent to our district by the state continually declining. Of the 15 and a half years that I sat on the Moline School Board, we passed a balanced budget 4 times. Every other time we were having to dig out of reserves to be able to educate our children. And, for better or for worse, we always did it without a property tax increase. In those 15 and a half years, we had a property tax increase once, and that was for what is called operations and maintenance, because the average age of the school buildings in the city of Moline is 85 years old. We had roofs that were leaking where to teach, children had to use umbrellas to sit at their desks. And that's the only property tax we had in the 15 and a half years that I served in the Moline School District. People, when they look at the school districts, they don't realize what the districts have to go through. And I, even as a board member, don't realize what educators have to go through because I don't walk in their shoes. But it is a very, very difficult process today. And the scary part about it is, it's political. It is the only corporation type in the United States that is run by amateurs.
Mm-hmm.
You do not have to have any educational experience to be on the Board of Education. And oftentimes, because you do have educational experience, you don't get elected. And so it's a unique animal to our country. I'm not saying it's bad, it's just unique.
And then,
Go ahead.
I would just like to share in contrast, what I view as some successful school boards are school boards that do have a balance of people that are interested in their communities as well as some educators. So for instance, if you were to look at Pleasant Valley's composition of their board members, they tend to have someone who is a school teacher that's on their school board, but they usually work, a lot of times they work in Rock Island or in Moline, so they work in the next state over so as to not to be a conflict of interest, but they still have someone on the board that is more aware of some of the policies and procedures that your administrators or your superintendent will bring to the board to ask questions about. I'd like to take the time out really quickly. If we could go through, and I just would like for you guys to introduce yourselves to the group and also just share what your experience is with K-12, whether you're someone studying to be a teacher, whether you have grandchildren, whether you volunteer, but can you just kind of share with the group where you stand at in K-12 education?
Okay, well, I'm Susie Geisler. I'm a student here at Augustana. I went through the K-12 system, obviously. I'm out of it 3 years. And I do want to work with children, especially those who speak Spanish. And so I just think it's really important that the whole environment for a child is given an opportunity to allow the child to be the best that they can. And one of the biggest influences are the school systems. And it needs to change so that everyone gets their chance.
My name is Sonia Knudsen. I'm retired from Augustana. I did teach 1 year in high school and decided that was not the best age. But that had nothing, that was a fit, not anything against the children at all. I volunteer with World Relief.
Yes.
And so I bring a lot of children to schools, and you and
Yeah,
I have
that's
met, yes.
recognized, yes.
And I've been in the academy, and I've brought a lot of children to schools in Rock Island, not so much in Moline. And so I'm very aware of the challenges that they face. I'm happy for the most part about the way that the Quad Cities have stepped up to the plate on this, because I realize it is a big challenge and a big financial challenge, and I think that lots of good things have been done. And I just, if I may take 1 second to make a comment about what you were saying about enriching programs, probably one of the issues also is getting parents who have not had those experiences at all to understand how important it is for their children to be able to take part, money aside.
Absolutely. Understanding our school system, or the opportunities,
And the
understanding
opportunities, right.
that our school system is different.
That's right,
You know, like you were saying, it's unique. It is unique the way we are run. I agree.
so.
Yeah, and thank you for, because I was like, I know you.
Yeah.
So thank you. And we will talk a little bit more about that dynamic of poverty relating to that population of immigrants and refugees that are just helping us grow our numbers and actually drive enrollment in a lot of places where we've seen a decline in enrollment. Our ELL populations have been solely responsible for driving those numbers back up, especially on the Illinois side, where we have made extra efforts to welcome those families into our communities and to help grow them so that they do feel a part of our communities. Thank you.
My name's Judy Collins, and I'm a retired psych mental health advanced practice nurse, primarily focused on children and adolescents. And I started doing that in 1970. So I have had a long history of children in school from that point of view. That drove me to become a school board member for 9 years in Muscatine, which is largely families with histories in the Mexican culture, because many of them were brought to that area to make ketchup. The Heinz ketchup was one of the largest employers for those that didn't have an education. And we have fairly successful method of keeping the community together after a long number of years. Early on, they were sent home after the growing season, but later, there are a large number of families that are settled out, and their offspring have been very successful. In fact, one of the most successful kids in my oldest son's graduating class is now the principal at Bettendorf High School, who has been acknowledged as an exceptional administrator. And so that's part of my background. My other part is I was educated to be a nursing educator. And so I had the educational piece as well as the treatment piece, and taught for a number of years, most recently retiring from the University of Iowa College of Nursing, where I taught both undergraduate and graduate students, and continued to mentor those students as I was at my practice, which was here in the community. I now, with all my free time, I mentor a second grader at Eisenhower School, which is an interesting school. Early on, very high rent, highly affluent, but now, because of the mobility and the difference in where we plant our apartment buildings, we have quite a number of low-income children as well. One of the keys that I have seen in the mentees that I have been assigned is the fact that they don't stay at one school for very long. I had one youngster last year who was in kindergarten, and this was his third school. I had a second child when that child was not any longer at school, whose mother was addicted, and the child was removed from mother within the family of the sister, and she was taken out of town to a setting in which the children could join her if she was successful. And so all of a sudden, in the middle of the year, she was taken to go and work with her mother in another setting. And it wasn't very long after they came back to the community that mother deserted them. And so I would say that one of the other big pieces that we might want to consider is the Adverse Children Experience, or ACEs. And I hope everybody's heard of ACEs, because that has now been designated as by the CDC, which you've heard spoken of with the Ebola situation, because they do national work to keep track of where our biggest health problems are. And this has been determined as one of the things that can shorten your life as an adult if you were never cared for as a child. And so both the Illinois and the Iowa side of the river are in a consortium to deal with this, so that healthcare providers and others, educators, people in all walks of life that touch families and children will have the help that they need from the earliest point. And I see many of these children in this fragile situation, and it's one of the, we could pour all the money in the world into schools if we don't help them in the external life. They may not make the improvement that we would hope they would be. My grandson is at a STEM school in Pittsburgh, and that that school is probably about 15 years ahead of where Iowa is, or even Illinois. I'm not sure about the progress in math science and I worried about the children that were not on the robot teams. That's one of the real
We started
important
one. We started one for our refugee students.
Right. That when there aren't accommodations made for all the children to be involved in those, because they're so highly motivating, and they're so important to their success, that I worry about what kinds of supports for those volunteer kinds of extracurricular things
Right.
that children will never have and therefore never excel. And this is such an important piece of our modern business and cultural life that I worry a whole lot about how the educators are approaching those kids when it comes to, oh, you would love being on a robot team. Girls are very involved. It's probably 50-50 in the program. And here in the Quad Cities, 4-H, Girl Scouts, all those girl-like things are now excelling and getting kids involved. And often can overcome some of that trauma stuff. So, I'm sorry.
No, Judy,
That's
you've hit on a couple of very good points, because we talk about, one of the things that we like to zero in is the mobility rate. Because currently, where I work at the Rock Island Academy, we have a 46% mobility rate. And so you have students who you always know they're going to come back to you. Even though they leave you, you always expect that they come back. So you don't get rid of their records. You make sure that you pick up almost where you left off at. And what I would like to say is of credit, though, is that being a bi-state area, Iowa and Illinois have done a great job of just working together to build those relationships, to say, hey, you've got one of mine coming to you, let me know if you need anything, or just, reaching out and checking on those students once they've left your school and to come back. But I think if we kind of put together a system that is a little bit more focused and deliberate in our actions, I think that's where we look at how do we come up with some solutions to deal with those. Because if we do know a child is coming, one of the things I know we worry about academics and behavior a lot of times, or if we notice those higher absenteeism rates, it's probably best to have some other supports in place for them when they get there. And I think that's the part or the piece that we miss out on, and try to find ways to do that.
One of the things that is trouble in doing a lot of that is the rules that the states have about what they'll fund if the child is in the other state.
Right.
And, that would be a political kind of thing that we might want to work at, and that I've had children whose grandparents live on the other side of the river, either way, and they go for extended periods of time living with that group of family members, and they can't get funded right away.
Right.
It takes months before they can bill, and therefore I never found that to be a problem, because I would take care of the kid. It didn't matter if they would pay for it. But other people would look at it and say, forget that. You'll have to find somebody over on the other side, and they don't live there anymore.
And I think United Way is one of those agencies that, to the top of my head, that helps us work through some of those difficulties in this region.
And they're part of the ACES project too.
Okay, well, my name is Kiana Norris. I am currently a 6th grade teacher, a 6th grade diverse learner teacher for Chicago Public Schools. I teach at George Armstrong Elementary, which is on the it's on the north side of Chicago near Evanston. It's in Rogers Park. I'm in a unique position because since I'm a diverse learner teacher, it's called inclusion and resource, where I go into the classroom and I pull students out. So I'm exposed to a lot. I see exactly the strengths and weaknesses, the things that are really needed inside the classroom. I see a lot of over-representation in special education. You know, just being a part of Chicago Public Schools, the politicalness, I'm exposed to so many different things. Also, working at George Armstrong, there's about 1,500 students at the school. There's about 27 languages spoken at the school. So I'm also work with refugees.
You see those high
Yes.
numbers as well at your school?
Yes, at our school. Then we have about 200 plus diverse learners at our school. So I'm very passionate about education, very excited about being here and being a part of the discussion. One of the things that I would like us to touch on, definitely when you talked about the robotics class and how it's very important for students to get exposed to higher levels, rigor, higher levels of education, higher levels of mathematics and engineering. Being exposed to these things at an early age is key and highly important. So my concern is, even reading one of the points, how dropout rates 16 to 24-year-old students who come from low-income families are 7 times more likely to drop out. So I look at this point and I think about, I'm constantly asking myself, okay, so you may have an area in Chicago, and the school is, most of the schools are low performing, or not low performing, low income. And so you may have this one area where, okay, it's just a neighborhood public school, okay? But you may go 12 miles down and someone has decided, okay, we are going to make this school a selective enrollment school. So the expectation is already set that, okay, these are basically according to student scores, this is who's going to get accepted to this school. We have already set an expectation that they will succeed.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
If we need to weed out some students, by all means we'll do that. If we need to get more family involvement, it's already an expectation set that these students will achieve. Well, I don't understand that. Because if you have made that conscious decision and you're going to, it's 12, they're still in the low income neighborhood. So what's changing? Their environment haven't changed. It's the expectation that have changed.
And the students pick
So,
up on it.
and the students pick up on it.
Yes,
Students,
they do.
they have,
Yes, they do.
I strongly believe, I'm also a coach at my school. So, and I have a business background. So I'm really big on, they have to know that someone cares.
Mm-hmm.
They have to be motivated first. You have to encourage them. They have to have real life experience. Feeding them, having them to regurgitate information is, what does that mean? They're not being analytical thinkers by doing that. You're not challenging them to prepare them for the real world, to motivate them to be a part of their community. It's so, and I know that education is so vast. There's so many great areas. There's so much involved. I mean, just thinking about the family itself. How the family, they say, is the prototype of our society. It's a reflection of our society. So if the family is dysfunction, our society is going to be dysfunction. And there needs to be more discussion about what family, they play an intricate part. So as a teacher, it becomes challenging. It becomes weary. It's very taxing at times where you're trying to do as much as you can do. But the statistics were still showing, they say, oh, you're with the kids most of the time, but no, we're not. No, we're not. We're not with the students. It goes beyond the classroom. Parents really do need to get involved. Students are different. That's one thing I respect about being in special education. Kids are different. So you cannot create these cookie cutter, mandates and throw them out there and think that it's going to apply to every single school, every single district, every single home, every single child. It's so different. So sorry,
You raise a very interesting point with the parents, and the fact that in addition to the work, Judy, that your organization is doing as a board member and as educators, and you see this too, there are so many parents who had such a bad experience in education that then when their child is going to school, because of the parents' bad experience in education, the parents are reluctant to come into the school to talk about their children. The parents are reluctant to help at home like they need to do. And so it's not only do we have to, how do we educate the child to become the analytical thinker to be able to do that, how do we work with the parents to be able to get them to understand that, yes, you might have had a bad educational experience, but we can help you with that, and as a result of helping you with that, then you and we can help your child.
And that's why I think it's so important that the schools do provide that support system, especially for those children who don't get that support at home. We have to create something, again, that allows every kid to have that support and to succeed and grow.
And I think you bring up something that's important, that's kind of coming from, I taught 7 years, and I've been in administration for 3 years, but I also worked with the TRIO program through St. Ambrose Upward Bound. So I spent about, from the year after my freshman year in college all the way through a few years teaching, being a counselor, a tutor counselor, a housing director, an instructor for the program, and realizing that we in education have been given so many more responsibilities and in educating the whole child. And so when we look at how do we solve these problems, it's not essentially the child. We like to put the child first, but if we don't address some of those outliers, those other obstacles that pop up, meaning educating the whole parent even, that's where a lot of our issues lie, because sometimes we can do so much with the child, but we still have to, whatever extends beyond our school day is out of our control to a degree, unless we make a concerted effort to say, hey, this is what we're going to do to bring this family in. And one researcher, Carol Dweck, if you guys ever look her up, she talks about mindset, and basically just having the mindset of we can and they will has so much more bearing on how successful a student can be. And the essential fact, Paul Gorski wrote a text basically trying to reduce the achievement gap, and he calls it the achievement gap, but it's basically saying our kids are a lot more resilient than we give them credit for. And so even though they walk through our doors, a lot of times we say, oh, they've got all this going on, this parent's on drugs, this one is locked up, they're living with grandmother. But the fact is a lot of those kids make it to school every day. Even if they're responsible for getting themselves up and out the door, they may not have all the best clothing, or hygiene may be an issue sometimes too, but they make an effort to get up and to get there. And so for me, working with the mindsets of our educators and our communities to say what students can do instead of limiting them, I think you'll see a huge shift when we start to realize that our students have way more capabilities than we realize. Because I was just sitting with teachers yesterday, we were looking at assessments that would align to PARC, which is one of the new assessments in Illinois or across the state that addresses the Common Core standards. And the interesting part is some people were surprised, but some teachers were like, our kids can do this. And yes, it is tough. Yes, it is a lot more rigorous, but they can do this. And so if we can get our mindsets to change in the direction of seeing the glass half full instead of half empty, and just focusing on the resiliency of our students, you start to make some of those changes with that student that can't be controlled by what's going on out here, as long as the time that they have with you too. So it balances it out. Yes, we have to educate the whole parent and work on those systems as well, but also know that your child comes in with a lot more assets than we realize. They do have some deficiencies, but they have a lot more assets that we don't always give them credit for, and that's what we need to capitalize on.
If you can get a child to make the transition from saying I can, I will, to finally saying I am, it's an amazing thing where the child first of all says, I can do this. You challenge them and you put it and all of a sudden they get the mindset, they say I can do this. And then they have success. And then they make the transition to say, I will do this, instead of that when they're presented with something new, instead of hesitating or whatever, they jump at it and they say, I will do this. And then finally, as they make that transition, then they stand up taller and they walk taller, because now they're saying, I am somebody. I can succeed in this world. And that's the type of transition that if you can get parents saying it, you can get children saying it, a lot of our problems are going to go away.
So Tia, you're saying it's a change that's needed in the culture of our schools, in
It
our
is.
classrooms.
Yes.
Definitely, and I
Those that
think,
work with the children day in and day out.
And that's at all levels. That happens,
Yeah.
that's going to happen here too.
but that's because, in that child voice, we always do things to children. When do we do things with
For
them?
them. Yeah,
Not for
for
them,
them,
but
yeah.
with them. When
With
do
them.
we include their voice in talking to them about, because there's a lot of things, you talk about robotics. A lot more, we introduced Legos and storytelling and architecture and building just through Legos, something that most kids have access to, not all, but most kids have had access to building blocks of some sort. And so why can't you make that connection or help them make that connection to the same building blocks or Legos that I've used here as a kid? I can actually do something like this, and when I get older, make buildings and make new designs of things. So how do we make those relevant connections to them? And I think at the basis of it, we forget one aspect is just those relationships we build that can help us change our mindsets.
One of the things that I learned from my sister was about the Bridges to Poverty, Ruby Payne's work. And in their school district, they educated all of their staff, now not just the teachers and administrators, but everybody about that. And one of the things that it did was change the attitudes. And you were speaking about families. This broke down a lot of the barriers that family members had. One of the things that my sister did after she retired as superintendent was to go into the school that had been her base when she was a teacher, and she did evening classes for the parents, and she would teach them how to teach the kids, and especially math. They could do the reading, those that were literate, and they had set up programs for literacy training. And there was an amazing increase in the work that the kids could do. And this was one of the schools that I think they were 80% poverty. So I think there are ways that we can bring in resources from out of the area too.
Would you like to?
My name is Megan Young. I'm a senior here, a communication, sciences, and disorders and Spanish major. Hope to one day be a bilingual speech language pathologist and researcher. So I've had clinical experiences at Head Start in the Fort Santa neighborhood, volunteered at Longfellow, so different things. Kind of been able to get out in the community and help out a little bit. But so I'm kind of passionate about learning more about what are the best ways for English language learners and building strong foundations in literacy and ensuring that language development happening in those critical periods for ensuring future success. So that's kind of what I'm interested in. But also, I'm from Galesburg, so we've had some big issues in our school board, and it's really put an interesting strain and dichotomy in our community. So, kind of interesting, because I don't even know that much about, I guess, how the school board, what all they do, and just all this attention on our school board this year is really kind of, I don't know, it's really involved everyone. We had a big strike. And now, I think, and people are still kind of, because they're not giving back the 6 days that the teachers were striking, and it's kind of doesn't really make sense, and it's kind of to punish the teachers and take away those pay, or what people are saying, because why wouldn't they make that up? They make up, snow days and other things, so it's kind of people in our community are kind of fighting back, I don't know, it's restore 160 something,
Yes,
but
I've seen that.
yeah.
I think, in the area too, Sherrard District has also had some issues with, it's bargaining, essentially, what are your rights? So the speaker today kind of hit upon those things, how strong are your unions, and when you are, this is delicate though, because as a person and as an individual, and as a teacher and educator, you really truly want what's best for students. So striking, although that's what the method is that we're trying to still, you know, say, hey, you got rights and things that you're supposed to have, it's a really hard road to walk, knowing that in me fighting for my rights, I'm also endangering students who won't have that classroom instruction for those 6 days. So it is foolish, I mean, to say that because we want to punish you for standing up for your rights to help us work together to come to an agreement to help us live and survive, it's foolish to say we're not going to be child-centered, because that's what I see in a lot of these situations. It's not as much student-centered. We're looking at adult behaviors and adult outcomes, and not looking necessarily at the outcomes of our children. So it is, you know, it's very unfortunate that they're not going to give those 6 days back, because those kids need that instruction. We already know that that's not nearly enough time as it is, but they're losing out. And so it's just, no, that's kind of because there's so many different things that come from it, you know, just people want different things, and a lot of times they really essentially want the same things. We just don't always know about how to communicate. Here's what we think we need, and then here's what we think we need, and then together can we figure out how to get there.
Yeah.
So it's a little struggle.
Is it 2 Spanish students? It's a good population.
Yes.
Hi, I'm Marcy Mendenhall. I am the CEO of SAL Family Community Services, and we serve about 700 kids a day within 3 of our child care centers of Skip Along. And so within our Rock Island campus, we're 100% CCAP, which would be they are eligible to receive state earnings. And within that 181, at Rock Island we have 181 students, we have 13 different languages.
You're seeing it.
So we're seeing it, so we are the pipeline to your schools. And so we are one of the first, we just received some funding from DHS. We are one of the first therapeutic childcare. My background is in mental health. Judy and I go way back. But my background is in mental health, so we are looking at how to meet the emotional needs of the children as they come in, so they can transition well within our Rock Island campus. We have that high rate of poverty, but our children leave at 92% they're kindergarten ready. We have 92% of our kiddos are. So we see that ability to connect and help teach and get the children ready, despite the disparity they may be seeing at their homes. And some of the community work, we just brought in for Quad Cities for Opportunities, brought in Dr. Donna Beagle. She is a poverty researcher. She has worked it and lived it in limiting poverty. So we're trying to create a community to have that movement to take over and challenge how poverty is happening in our community. Her belief is that we have to have navigators to help people out of poverty. So she talks about being bilingual, what she learned to be successful and bilingual in the poverty language, but also in the middle class language. That disparity has allowed her work within herself, and her research has allowed a lot of growth and opportunity for herself and the people who have worked with her. So it's learning about language, interactions, personal space.
The secret code, the
Yeah.
unwritten
Yeah,
rules.
so-
The
yeah,
unwritten
yes,
rules.
Yes,
like
absolutely.
Like Ruby, yeah, like
Exercise
Ruby
rules.
Payne.
Yeah, we all need that training,
Right.
unless we've been there and successfully worked our way out.
Correct.
And if you haven't been in it, somehow you have to learn.
Correct.
You have to learn it somehow.
It's not just educators now. Now that all people are able to get affordable care, the folks in healthcare are having to take the same preparation that educators have had to, because they didn't get it either, and they didn't understand. And many times that was a deterrent to healthy behaviors. And so it's been very interesting to flex that over into the hospital and clinic and caregiving. And many of our kids have chronic diseases that also come to school with them.
So we're becoming a trauma-informed care agency, so we're looking at that aspect also, but we're really looking at the social and emotional as a key component for children's success along with the IQ.
So how many programs are there, like in this similar, because I'm just thinking when you say social emotional, there are a lot of students who, in the public school system, who have social emotional issues. Like that's been a big topic at our school in particular. You know, you may have special bad kids may have a counselor that they can go to. But let's just say we're starting to see a lot of students wanting to commit suicide.
Yep.
A
Yep.
growing number.
Yes,
Especially among African American females.
yes.
So who is there to consult, to help these students? You know, they say that there's a lack of funds, so they cannot provide a counselor. So I think that's another issue that we're dealing with.
Another place for money.
But that's, I think, and like we talked about a little bit previously, that's why the advocacy and the partnerships are so key in these. I will say, a lot of times our constituents don't know where the source of all these fundings come from. I think some people have a general idea that property taxes help fund our schools if they ever look at the tax bill. If you're in a situation to have a home that you own or a property that you own, because a lot of times you might not know that a tax bill exists. And so part of that discussion comes from, we had a school improvement grant. We had $1.5 million at my elementary school. And so a lot of times people are expecting certain things to happen. Like we don't have a water fountain. We have a new addition to the building, but we don't have a water fountain where the restrooms are. And they're like, where's the water fountain? How come you don't use that 1.5 million? Because it's not earmarked that way. And because there are some other things that, there's different monies for different needs. And so part of the conversation is we have to be competitive in going after grants and other resources to get those kind of things in. I was at a building where we had a counselor 1 day a week.
Well, no.
And so
That's standard in Moline.
but the issue with that is that because when we look at where the cuts come from, when we go to balance these budgets, some of those support staffs are the first to go. And so when districts do that, or when school boards say, okay, based on these recommendations from the superintendent or the chief financial officer in your district, these are the recommended tier 1 cuts or tier 2 cuts. Part of it is the action plan that needs to be in place is, okay, granted the schools can't fund this, but what outside agencies or partnerships can you bring in to replace some of those services that you're going to cut?
Are you working with Robert Young at all? Where they're
Yeah.
based? Because we were I did 5 years at Vera French, the school-based therapy. So yeah, I think Robert Young.
And the outcomes, the research outcomes on school-based services are very good.
Yes.
The children improve, the families actually get attached to the therapist.
Yes.
And it doesn't take them out of their workplace, it doesn't bring a child out of classroom. It's beneficial to schools because then they can be consulting on suicides.
And the one thing that is, unless you sit at the table of the school board too, is there's this real problem in the fact that the school district can only suggest, simply because if people don't understand it. Well, why can't you force this child to get into therapy, or why can't if the district can do that, but then the district's responsible for footing the bill. And so that's again where the family education needs to come into play, the comfort level with the school district. All too often when the school district, through the counselor, through the principal or whomever, sits down with the parents and says, okay, here is your student's individual educational plan, their IEP, and as a result of this, here are things that we would like you as a family to participate in, and we would like you as a family to do in addition to the school district. All too often the parents will step back and say no, because the school district is the enemy. And so that's where the educational of all people in the family really needs to come into play. And that's got to be one of the steps that somehow, some way, we as a society, we as a community have to do. We have to be able to get everybody on the same page to understand that everybody is working for the betterment of the child and the betterment of the whole family.
And Margarita we were talking earlier just about the pure relationships that you have to build. So there's a lot of undoing when you have parents who are unsuccessful with schools or their relationships weren't good. When they have to bring their children back in, there's a lot that don't cross that invisible threshold that's there. They'll walk their kid up to the door, but won't walk them in the door. And so it's and I think the breakdown of that sometimes just comes from the relationship we build with the child. If we can convince the child that this is safe, it's a respectful learning environment, then they tug on their parents. There's some parents that, we had a learning is family time, a list of it. And you should have saw the eyes light up of a kid who finally got her mom to bring them to school, to an event after school that's fun, for them to read together, for them to eat together, for them just to have a good time. Because now that child knows my mom thinks it's important for me to learn. And so it is finding other ways to break down those barriers so that they do feel comfortable. And so, and again, it's a tough, the services are there though. We might not have it full time in the form of a counselor, but a lot of times I encourage my parents that if you are low income, if you're at the poverty line, if you are receiving these services, you do have access to this kind of care. But getting them and having it in a place where it's accessible, because if they miss too many appointments, guess what? They can't see you. You gotta start the process all over again. You're non-compliant. And them not coming in isn't that I don't think it's important for my child to learn. We're finally breaking down those stigmas about
Stigma is huge.
because the point is, and I tell them this, if you have a headache, you'll take a Tylenol. So why would you medicate, or not even medicate, but treat an illness that's of your mind sometimes? And I think just helping them to understand that it exists way more, and that we're not here to say something's wrong with you.
Well, we have cultures with all those languages that you're representing. We have cultures that have big problems with mental illness. And if they even accept,
Talk about it.
and you almost have to know that about that culture before you approach them. And now, at least, we have people researching that so that we can reach out to that expert and find out before we screw it up with the family, because it really does help.
One thing is, we were at the planning meeting the other night that is very, very timely, that is an action step that we can take right away, is the fact that in the state of Illinois right now, school board election petitions are being taken out. And so if you know of someone, who you think would be a good advocate for children, someone who cares about education, someone who would like to get involved, and as a school board member, everybody, it's kind of interesting, and I did the same thing with the young lady who's an alderman for Rock Island. I said, well, how do you like being an alderman? And they always ask me, how do you like being a school board member? Like's not the right word. It is, on the one hand, it is the most rewarding volunteer work I've ever done, but on the other hand, it is the most frustrating work I've ever done. But if you know someone who is interested in their child's education, in the education of everybody in the district, you've got to speak to them, and you've got to literally take them by the hand and get them to the Rock Island County Courthouse and have them take out their petition to run for school board. Because that is the only way that we can get our schools to, in some instances, move forward, in other instances to continue to move forward, is if you have people sitting on the board who care about kids, and I think, although it's not essential, I think have children that are in the district. It's when I stepped off the board because of a variety of reasons, but even if I could, I wouldn't run again because I don't have children in the district. I'm almost 70. It's time to take somebody younger to put on the board and to have work, and that's the first thing that we can do.
Absolutely.
Is to get people in your line of work. You have a wonderful organization. Kudos to you. And as a result of your work, you know people who care about education. You know people who care about education in each of our communities. You need to go and very gently, or maybe not so gently, whip them upside the head.
Absolutely.
And say, you are the type of person who should be on the Moline, the Rock Island, the East Moline School District.
What's
School
new
Board.
of a deadline?
The filing deadline is, I believe, January, but I'm not sure.
Okay, so involvement, because we want to come away with ideas.
Yeah. Right.
We do a lot of time, but we want to come away with
One
ideas.
of the things you want to watch out for, though, is if they have a sacred cow and they are only on there because they want to get this done.
There's, yeah.
And I've served with board members like that have broken the board apart. I mean,
And you know, and that's important. You have to find somebody who, I mean, we have
who
to
can
make the most.
cooperate.
Another thing is we look at
Something to
it.
shake it up a little bit. It's okay.
It is.
Yeah.
In Rock Island, we were able to appoint, or the board was able to appoint a new member during a vacancy. And I was so impressed at who they had selected because she is a parent of students. She has 3 students in our district, and she's a professor at Western. But it was just really nice to know, and she was someone that started off in the community, but finally somebody who has a vested interest, because the ones that she goes home with every day can tell her or reflect on what's going on in those classrooms and in the buildings, and that makes a very big difference when she hears the high school principal bring a topic to the board. Then she has a little bit more background information, or she's willing to go research and to see how do these things play out, because we were able to present. So then all of a sudden she pops up in our building and it's like, wow, you know, people that are committed to doing it. And it's just an exciting thing.
So being involved and also attending.
Yes.
Attending.
Oh,
That's something that people can do right away next month.
Yes.
Attend a school board meeting,
Yes,
speak
you're right.
up at the school board meetings. Because
And
very few
advocate
people
for the
go.
kids.
Very few people attend. But absolutely, I have that.
In Rock Island, we're gonna attempt to do the 1% sales tax again possibly, but the election is not a high, it's not normally a high turnout, because there may be one alderman that'll be reelected, or not reelected, I should say. There may be one office open for alderman and maybe some other ones, but this might be a good time too, if you have somebody that lives in Rock Island County, to get them out to the polls on that day and to vote in favor of this 1% sales tax that will improve so many different things in our
I think
schools.
there's a need to understand what that is.
Yeah, and
To
so,
understand what is this 1%.
instead of just saying taxes are going up.
Yeah, the
Right, that's what they
yeah, and the 1% is for facilities to make our, and so that's why if you take a look at the districts on the Illinois side, then you go across to Iowa and you take the buildings newer, they've got new facades, they've got new educational facilities. The 1% sales tax it would go into what is called the operations and maintenance fund. And one of the frustrating things about Illinois, the way the school boards run, is you can't move funds. In that 1% sales tax is what can be used to help, as crazy as it sounds, air condition the building. Kids learn really, really well when they're not up on the 4th floor of a high school and the temperature in the room is 97 degrees.
And I mean, and we look at it, we started to have some, we thought we were gonna pass a bond or a levy in Rock Island, and we thought we were gonna have the money to finish making changes to buildings. And so I have a couple of rooms in my building that were just cut short because we ran out of money, and here's what you get. You know, and it's like, it's unfortunate because, you know, and I don't think, and here's the difference. When people say no, I don't think they just don't know what they're saying no to. Scott County was able to pass theirs because, and I talked to our superintendent about this as well. They had kids doing the work. So they had kids saying, look, we want this big auditorium for theater arts. We want to improve our facility for where we perform at for athletics. We want better classrooms, you know, and so those were the kind of things that your friends will listen to you faster than they'll listen to maybe me.
Create a culture in the children so that they can engage in civic duty and make a change for themselves and their community.
Yeah, because they're the ones.
Yeah.
It ultimately affects.
I live in Moline, and this is what I heard, because you run in the school board. The superintendent makes X amount of dollars, let him take account. There are so many administrators, cut some of those. Why are you raising our taxes? How do you educate the community about this?
We have a lot of elderly people in Iowa, high percentage. Often they are the ones that are the most difficult to get to say yes.
And they turn out for elections.
And
Yeah, they always.
Yes, they
Because
do.
they're
In the education, not to
Right.
digress, but the education that we have to do for something like this is that if your school district is not a good district, your house isn't worth anything. If you want to.
That's a good-
If you want to sell your home as you get older and you want to downsize, or you want to move to warmer climates, or whatever it is you want to do, unless the district that you live in is a good quality district, people are not going to buy in that
Right.
neighborhood. They're going to go
Go
to
somewhere else.
Pleasant Valley, or they're going to go to who knows where. And so the most important thing, literally, for the value of your house and your community is the quality of your school district.
That's good leverage, because often people just say, well, I don't have any children in this world.
Right.
It's
That's
my
true.
limited income, because and I'm certainly retired for a while now. But I mean, that's an argument also, I have a limited income.
Mhm.
Why should I bring it into here when it doesn't benefit my family? But it does benefit the people who are in my age group.
Yeah.
And so we have the advocacy that we can do. I would like to invite all of you to become a navigator on March 10th. You can certainly come. Dr. Donovan will be coming back. You'll be learning how to be a navigator and be paired with someone, a neighbor living in poverty, in which then you will create a relationship. There's no money exchanged here. It's just helping people understand, hey, so we have the example of a principal. He went to the Opportunity Conference sponsored by or with Donner Beagle, and he went back and said, I don't know if you believe in God or not, but this is what happened. He said, I was sitting there and a mom came in whose child's been disruptive, and child was not doing what he needed to do. He sat the mom down. She said, I can't get a job. Things are so chaotic. I'm going to all these meetings and I can't. He said, well, I thought you had your CNA. And he said, well, I do. And then she kind of was quiet. She said, but I don't know how to fill out an online application. So he said, you're going to sit here and we're going to fill the application out. The next day, she got a job. So he was like, that's just what we need to do. We need to have someone have that hand holding, to take that pause and to do that. And that's what the navigators are going to be doing. And we're looking at super navigators, and those would be people who, I have a student loan that I can't pay back. We're trying to work with the local colleges to see what can be done, because you can't necessarily get your transcripts to go in and further your education if you still have a bill. You can't get a CNA or other licensure if you have an infraction of the law. So we have super navigators looking at the law piece. And so those pieces will be dealt with, but I would invite you all to come March 10th, and if you want to give your name, I'll put you on the list and we can get you on there. Then I think it's April 18th is when you'll be, you'll meet your neighbor living in poverty, and then we'll both attend another training with Dr. Donald.
It's pretty.
It is, I mean.
Is that for the Illinois side?
It's for both.
Both.
It's both sides. It's the Quad City area.
When is the sales tax vote?
If the school districts decide that they want to go for it again, it would probably come up with in the April vote.
It's in April.
April,
Okay.
yeah.
It's going to be in April. Where is their material, information? Where can the people read up about it?
The thing that the best place to do to find out about the benefits of the 1% sales tax would be to literally contact their school district and have their, first place to start would be, if they have children in school, would be to talk to their building principal. And if the building principal doesn't have the information, he or she can be able to get it for them, to be able to find out what the 1% sales tax will work towards.
All right.
And so I know we're getting our efforts together like I know as we speak, so if you're interested and wanna help or anything, just let us know.
I sit on the Davenport Poverty Council, Davenport School District. Do you guys have your own council? Because we're looking at transportation, early childhood, and then parent engagement. And that is a broad spectrum of constituents, and we're sitting around the table, helping. Very myopically, we know that poverty is very invasive. So we're really looking at very intentional and taking just those 3 pillars and trying to figure out how to drill down.
Just to let you guys know, we're planning on reconvening at 12:30 in the auditorium for the roundtable discussion or round chairs or whatever we're going to have. I don't know. We'll figure it out. Okay? Thank you.
Go ahead.
Yeah, we don't have a council like that, but I think what's important is that we take what's existing before we go creating others. As a school of high need, everybody wants to help us.
Absolutely.
But I can be honest and say that everybody's effort isn't as focused. And so what I've been doing is when people say, how can I help you or help your school? I try to push them in the direction of something that's existing so that they can kind of work with those groups. So there's a concerned citizens group, the CARE group, that I've invited to a task force meeting, which meets with the city employees as well as school district employees and neighborhood association groups. So the task force is an area that I'm hoping to help them grow it in a way that because again, I want to work on how do we build that local but yet global partnership where we have all hands on deck working in the same direction, but we're not at this meeting here, or this meeting there, or this meeting, where we have to try to connect all the pieces, whereas if we have one location, that's one of the things that we're working on. So, but you said the what are the 3 areas of your group?
Parent involvement, transportation, and early childhood. And this was actually formed from 3 school board members who said they really want to take an understanding. This is a broad perspective from the entire district.
So I wrote down notes of what was shared, and I then put it into ideas because we want to walk around out of here with some ideas of what we can do. And please let me know what I can add or change. I have involvement on the school boards, running for a school, for a seat on the school board. Now that the step is go to the county board, is that right?
County courthouse.
County courthouse.
Take out the petition and then circulate the petition, get the appropriate number of signatures and turn it back in.
Because that's what changes made. It's made on that school board. And as you mentioned, there are people on the school board that don't always have education experience or their heart there for the children. We were in an auditorium with people who want change. There must be someone there, or someone who knows someone, as you said, to run. And even just attendance at school boards means a lot. To fill those seats when they see people, when they hear people.
Rock Island, they're the 2nd and 4th Tuesday of every month. Rock Island School, 2nd and 4th Tuesday.
And you can share that.
Yeah, at the library.
Moline is the 2nd and 4th Monday.
Wow, and I'll share East Moline. I think it's I'll look it up, but I believe we're the 3rd Monday of every month. We have one person that shows up. Most of the time, it's the reporter.
We have the educational association representatives.
Oh, yes. And
seldom, if ever, our parents there.
Do you have TV?
No.
Ours is broadcast.
So you all say you meet once a week?
No, twice a month, 2nd and 4th Tuesday. But I always say this, if you find, and our board has been very instrumental in having students present from every school. So that has improved attendance, because if you're celebrating kids, who doesn't want to see that?
Absolutely.
And so, and that's been, I think, the highlight of their long evenings, when a student presents about Leader in Me or Common Core standards and how it's rolling out in their classrooms. So I think, I don't know if Moline or East Moline does that, but that's a way to get more people in.
Each school once a year. Educating community about the 1% sales tax for our Illinois Quad City schools, which the election will take place in April. And you had mentioned, talk to the building principal, make that your starting
That would
point.
be the starting point
Starting
to find
point.
information about that.
Talk to your neighbors of what this is about. I love what you said, the comments of, but I don't have a child. You hear people say, but I don't have a child in school. and then
And not just the bribery, but the importance of
Sure.
it.
Yeah.
Right, exactly, the importance. You had mentioned at the beginning, Bob, the large disparity among the dollars spent per student in Illinois.
The new governor's office and new elected people are talking about changing the way in which money is allocated for the school district. I think that that's something that we can do as a groundswell to get to the people to look at a better and a more equitable way of being able to fund schools.
So contacting your
Local
your
representatives,
local
state
rep-
representatives.
Make your voice heard.
Yep.
Make your voice heard.
I have a quick question. I'm just wondering, do you all talk about student vouchers? Is that a discussion?
Not right now, because.
It will be with the new governor.
Yeah. No, well,
Yeah.
because we don't have that competition right now.
Yeah. What the vouchers would do here in the Illinois Quad Cities is if students who are going to private schools, be it either the Catholic schools or the non-denominational schools or whatever, what the vouchers would do is that would pull money out of the public schools and it would fund that school, that student's education in the private school.
So you're not supportive of that?
Pardon me?
Are you?
Am I for it?
Are you for it?
No, I'm a staunch supporter of public school.
Okay.
And my concern is not that, in Chicago, you have charter schools, and a bit where these schools are run by businesses, and I think what people don't always know, though, is their recruiting efforts. So much in the example you gave, those schools that are 12 miles or 12 blocks apart, the concern with ours is that I think competition is important, because if they're gonna do some ahead of the game type things and be innovative, and we're not, I think that competition is healthy. But what I don't agree with is singling out a certain group of kids who we already know may already do well. School is just a stepping stone for them. It's just a natural way of life. But for those and limited them and saying, okay, if you have behavior issues, we're not going to let you come in. If you have poor parent involvement, you're not helping us solve any other issues, any new issues. All you're doing is pull it, and it's the brain drain.
Yeah.
You're going to pull out.
Tracking.
Right, and so the students who may be a little bit lower won't have models that help bring them up in the public school setting, because they will remove that sector of students and put them over here. So again, we're increasing that gap of the haves and the have-nots, or just achieving. So that's why I'm not a support of it. It'd be different if it were everybody has a chance to go. It's first come, first serve, or a lottery pick.
Or athletic recruiting.
Yes.
Yeah, absolutely.
Not to mention choir and band and orchestra. It's a lot of times in schools where recruiting will be a lot more selective.
And you look at it, and not to beat Davenport over the head, I was just a little bit disappointed. I mean, I like neighborhood schools, don't get me wrong, but for me, I saw that they went from open enrollment across the district to limited to just the high schools. And in the back of my mind, you're only limiting it for the high schools because you still want that ability to recruit the good players to your buildings.
Yeah, that's interesting.
Because I don't see, I mean, before, you could do it from any school. You can go and I thought that was admirable. I thought it was nice that you can go from Davenport schools to the schools that were in, like North Scott, if you wanted to go wherever you wanted to go. It was choice for everybody.
That's a state law.
Yeah,
That's
but
not-
that's.
That's not just Davenport.
But the state law, but I felt like this, you were giving everybody a chance versus just saying now, okay, we're gonna just limit it to your 3 high schools and then just go wherever your neighborhood goes. Because are we then going to address what disparities exist in those neighborhood schools? And I don't think so. I think it was just a way of saying, hey, keep your schools where they're at, so you have those, but then at the high school level, let's try to get the best in at this one location. I don't know.
I wrote down also, people are going to say, what can I do, what can I do? Community members offering their talents, their time at our schools reaching out to the community. I know East Moline is welcoming, they want community members to come. How open do you feel Rock Island and Moline are? Very. So
Yeah.
offer your time, offer your talents.
If a person walks into a Moline school and walks into the principal's office and says, I want to volunteer, they're going to greet them with open arms and
Fantastic.
start the process going.
Fantastic.
And I would laugh, you don't always have to go to the principal's office. Where you could though, at our desks though, with the secretaries, you can request a volunteer application. And usually our turnaround time is 2 weeks.
That's, yeah.
To let you know. And then if there's some things, and I'm mindful of that too, because sometimes we have parents who have had indiscretions before they became parents. And so what I also recommend that they do is just that if they already know they exist, then have a conversation with the principal. And we can find other ways for you to contribute
That's
without
what I was
necessarily
right.
working with the kids. Because
Exactly.
sometimes we want to make sure every kid's safe though. So we're not leaving
You have
anything
to
to
have a
chance.
criminal background
Right.
check if you're gonna be in the building.
Working with kids.
Working with the
And
kids.
so what we would say is there's other things that you can do, whether you take letters home and cut them out for the teachers, or whether you bring your kid to a family night. So just trying to get those.
I was thinking even a person who maybe doesn't necessarily want to work directly with a child, are they grant writers?
Right.
Boy, could we use grant writers in our district. Or after school hours, are you an engineer? Could you help us in our robotics team that we're forming? Could you help
help with our
start?
traffic problem?
Could you help-
You know, just
exactly.
Not
thinking.
every
So
offender
many
is
things.
necessarily going to be thrown out. There are parents that have been in jail or in prison, and they may be a watchdog, which means they'll be watching whether they're running in the halls, if there's any fighting in the cafeteria, monitoring the whatever.
Goodness, I was gonna say, even if they have, again, I'm on Lego robotics. If you have extra Legos sitting at home, I will take your extra Legos. That helps us out. Do you have an old laptop?
Oh, yeah.
It doesn't even have to be internet, connected. We just need to be able to run our
Toys.
program, so we can program our robot. Anything like that would help.
And books. You
Yes.
donate books.
Books.
And then I think the bigger piece is, we talked about school board elections, we need to also vote.
Oh,
yeah.
yeah,
Yeah.
vote. Get out and vote.
Get out and vote.
Make your voice heard. Absolutely. I think these are all things that we can
Thanks, you
take
guys.
away.
Oh my gosh,
Let's
thank
head on
you.
downstairs,
Yeah.
yeah.
Great conversation.
Yeah,
Yeah, did you say you looked it up or down?
Yeah.